degrees. So that's what AccuWeather says. Punxsutawney Phil says it's spring. Well, it's coming early anyway. 37 in downtown Indiana right now. We want to thank the Indiana County Tourist Bureau for providing our reports with Josh from Gobbler's Knob in Punxsutawney. We've had Josh on with us all morning long, and Tourist Bureau made that possible. We appreciate that very, very much. All right, Mr. Pollock is with us right now. It's Indiana in the Morning on WCCS 101.1 FM, AM 1160, and WCCSradio.com. Our conversation with Bob Pollock is brought to you by Marcus & Mack, voted best personal injury law firm in the Best of Indiana County contest. Marcus & Mack, a law firm representing injured people. Good morning.
Good morning.
It's good to have you with us this morning.
Good to be here.
As usual on a Friday, so Punxsutawney Phil probably changed all your plans. Huh? Well, you plowing the garden this afternoon?
Yeah, we'll have to get ready.
You know, timing of when you're going to be planting your garden is a key, and that soil preparation, when you're going to get outside and start working on it, you've still got some time for that. But a lot of folks are starting plants indoors.
Right.
And maybe even right now.
Yes, they could be.
Yeah.
Especially if, some of the vegetables that might only take 40, 45 days to grow. Mm-hmm. Lettuce would be an example of that. You can start that indoors. You can grow the whole crop indoors if you want to.
Yeah.
Not even, keep getting that early crop.
You could actually
or maybe
have
you've
been
grown
doing
it all
that.
winter.
Yeah, growing it all winter.
You had it all fall, as long as you could out in the garden, and then had started plants indoors, and then you could keep it going all winter long.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then when it's time to cycle back outside, then you're ready to do that.
When you are doing something, and particularly lettuce, if you're planting lettuce indoors and bringing it to full maturity indoors, obviously moisture is a big deal.
Right.
But sunlight is too, correct?
Yes. So you could do it without supplemental lighting, especially if you have it in a good sunny window or very close to a window, even though it's cloudy. But supplemental lighting will help. Inevitably, if it doesn't have enough light, it's going to stretch, it's going to get leggy. It might not stand upright as easy. It may lean over. Mm-hmm. And if you have it in a container in potting soil, it'll lay on the soil. It'll still continue to grow. And some of the coloration might not be as rich as it might be not as dark green. Yeah. Or if you're trying to grow a red leaf lettuce, that color will get bleached out if there's not enough sunlight.
Mm-hmm. Taste-wise, is there a big difference? Crunchiness is also a consideration.
It might be a little less crunchy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the flavor is going to be much off, but
when you are growing,
it'll take longer.
Yeah,
that's
true.
Temperature, moisture, and sunlight.
When you're growing plants indoors like that, and you're setting them next to the window to get their light, is it important to rotate them so the plants don't stretch for the light?
They'll still stretch. That side that's exposed to that light, it'll push and lean out and grow towards that light. So rotating it'll keep it more consistent and in better shape form.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to, but yeah, the plant's going to look better and it'll do better.
Yeah. And potting soil is still the recommendation as opposed to some other soil preparation when you're doing indoors?
Yes. Yeah. Indoor plant potting soil works fine. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We don't want a real heavy soil. Yes, we can grow a lot of plants just out in our regular clay type soils. No problem. But typically they're heavy, right? You have that same quantity in a container versus a peat-based, peat moss-based potting soil. Mm-hmm. Night and day difference in weight of that. Also the water holding capacity. Sometimes our normal outdoor soils will hold more moisture. So even though it might be warmer inside, that could cause us problems. It might stay damp longer, which, sometimes that's okay, and other times, especially when we're starting plants and they have a smaller root system, that wet soil in a bigger container, you can start to get some root rots, or they just won't
Yeah.
do well in there.
Now, there are people who also do a hot box outdoors.
Yes.
They dig a hole in the ground. They take an old window, generally, and they place that on top of it and let the sun hit that glass and warm that up inside. And they could be probably doing that now, right?
Oh, yeah. Yes, for sure. And there are all kind of ways to do that. I mean, you could build a block frame, dig out the soil and frame that with blocks like you would the foundation of your house.
Mm-hmm.
You could do it with wood, or you could just have a hole in the ground too.
Yeah.
If the soils hold up well enough on the edges of it and don't fall in. So yeah, you can do it that way. Have it down in the ground, and even built up above the ground also. And then you just have to. It's good to have a thermometer, so you know what the temperatures are. And based on your structure, gain some knowledge of, well, how does this react? When the temperature gets down in the 30s or 20s, how long does it stay warm? And then do I need to add any supplemental heat to that?
Yeah.
A lot of times they used to put manure in the bottom, so they would mix in manure and fresh manure, and then, of course, as that composted, it would give off heat. We don't like to use fresh manure. From a food safety perspective in growing crops, we don't like to use fresh manure like that anymore, just because there are harmful organisms in there. And until that manure is composted, or we have time to separate that whole process and the die-off of those potentially harmful organisms to when we're growing the crop, we like to avoid that. And you can put heat mats.
Again, though, when you have something that's using that glass as its heat magnifier, that'll dry that baby out pretty quick, too.
Yes.
You need to be really monitoring the moisture level.
You have to monitor the moisture. And again, the structure you have, how sealed and tight it is, will all influence how quickly the heat will dissipate or the heat will build up. And you got to check it. And most of the time, you'll have some way to prop open the lid so that it's just like it's a greenhouse. It's just a mini greenhouse, but we call it a cold frame.
Yeah.
So when we do get a sunny day, you'll have to monitor that a lot closer than on a cloudy day.
What are the dimensions that people generally do for something like that? How deep do they go, and how wide would it be, depending upon what you're planting?
Some of the structural things will depend on your windows, how you construct your lid. Windows are certain sizes.
What part of the house you tore them out of?
Yes, whatever house. Somebody gives you a window, well, then you'll build that to that size.
Yeah.
Or you'll
so
add,
if you've got a
hinge them
picture window, it's different.
That's right. Or you can hinge them together. Yeah. So you can build it as big as you want to. You just have to be able to manage it, to be able to open it, so that the lid's not too heavy. It's not too difficult to handle. Also, the quantity of plants. How many plants are you trying to seed or transplant and grow at a given time will also dictate the size.
And what about the depth?
And depth, again, that can vary. There's no real set depth. If you give yourself some extra room, that allows you to, change that soil, maybe improve that soil to a deeper level. If you're trying to grow plants in there to maturity, having at least a foot and maybe 2 feet, dig down in, add compost, improve that soil, and that varies by the type of soil the quality of the soil you have to begin with. But
do people also put potted plants down into those hot boxes? Cold boxes?
You could. Yeah. If you had already started things and even transplanted them into a larger container, you could set that in there. If you run out of room indoors and you need to transplant, move them out.
Yeah.
But it's still too cold yet. Sure, you could make that like a mini greenhouse. Now, the bigger the plants, putting pots in there, then you have to have room to do that, and then the height.
Yeah.
To have enough room, you don't want them pushing up against the top of the glass or the plastic, just because on a sunny day that surface you'll burn them right off.
You're going to have a really deep hole if you're going to put them in there in a plant or in a pot.
At that point, you might as well build a little bigger structure.
There you go. Just go ahead and put up a whole greenhouse.
Yes.
Why not?
And you can do all different sizes of those. There's low tunnels, so that might only be 2 to 3 feet tall. A lot of people will use like PVC water pipe, to make their bows, and those are pretty flexible. You can bend those around and get an 8-foot section or a 10-foot section, and make your hoops out of that. There's all kind of ways to do that, and you can make them different sizes, and you could make them based on the type of crops, how big the crop will get, and just size it that way. And so you can have smaller ones and bigger ones. But again, you're trying to create a room, essentially, where you can warm it up enough, also get advantage of the sunlight. And just being outdoors, we typically get more light than we do indoors.
Yeah.
Especially the farther you get into a room.
Have you ever made one of those and just laid out to get your tan?
Yeah.
No?
No.
Okay.
But
Good.
there
because
again,
that
an
was
alternate use when you're not growing crops. Yeah.
that was a disturbing image to pop into your head. So I'm glad to hear that. All right. So there you go. He's Mr. Bob Pollock from the Extension Service. Thanks for visiting with us this morning.
Ventilation is another thing. When you're building these structures, you need some way to get some air movement, because it can heat up there in a hurry, and if you're not on top of that and know that what can happen, essentially you can have a big meltdown, and all that works. You got to start over again.
I've known a few people who had a big meltdown too. All right, there you go. He's Bob Pollock with us this morning on this Friday. It is the voice of Indiana County. It's WCCS 101.1 FM, AM 1160, and WCCSradio.com. Coming up, Fox News, a couple of moments away from now. And then Jake Slobodnik is with us from our WCCS